Today we are going to learn Lecture 3 of 3, Chapter 4, Linear Programming. In subtopic 4.2, Solving Problem Involving System of Linear Inequalities. Okay. So our learning objective for today is 4.2a, formulates the system of linear inequalities in academic and business. B. Draw and sheet the feasible region. C. Determine and draw the objective function of the problem. And D. Compute the optimal value of an objective function by using the vertices of feasible region. In part B, we have problem interpretation. It's a process of converting daily problem into a form that can be solved by using mathematical approach method. So the basic structure is either to maximize or minimize an objective function while satisfying a set of constraints. Here is the steps in problem interpretation. So we got 4 steps. So the first step is we need to identify the variables from the problem statement. And step 2, we need to determine the objective function of the problem. Step 3, we formulate the system of linear inequalities using the constraint given for mathematical models. And the last step, we need to compute the optimal value of an objective function using the vertices corner point from part A, which is the previous lecture, of a feasible region. Okay, so now we are going to do this example. Okay. A factory produced 2 types of radio, hi-fi and mini, using machine P and Q in a month. It produced X unit of hi-fi models and Y unit of mini models. Machine P needs 40 minutes and 30 minutes to produce each unit of hi-fi model and mini model respectively. Machine Q needs 20 minutes and 35 minutes respectively for the same kind of work. Production in a month of a company is limited by following condition. So we got 3 conditions here. So the first is the amount of time used by machine P does not exceed, means that it is less than and equals to. And then the amount of time used by machine Q does not exceed 2,800 minutes, same as above. And the last condition is the profit of each unit of the model hi-fi and mini is 80 ringgit and 40 ringgit respectively. So the first question is we need to state the objective function in order to maximize the profit. Okay, so in order to get the objective function, we need to take from the question. So from the question, we know that the objective function is related to the profit. Okay, so it's related to the profit. So we know that the profit here is 80 ringgit and 40 ringgit. So the first step is we need to define first what is the variable of X and what is the variable of Y. So we know that X is the unit of hi-fi models and Y is unit of mini models. Okay, usually in the when we want to define the variable, we need to state its units. Okay, either it is in kg or in hectare or in acre. So you need to write down the unit, what type of the unit. Okay, and then to get the objective function, because the objective function is related to the profit, so we just find out the profit by xy is 80x plus 40y. So this is the objective function. We continue. Question B. write down the system of linear inequalities of the problem, means its constraint. So first, because of the question gives you in a sentence, so we need to put into the table, so it is easier to get the constraint. So read back what is the condition in this problem. So we got high-five and mini models, using machine P and Q. So in the table, so we put high-five and mini. High-five is X, mini is Y, and then we got machine P and Q, and then we read machine P needs 40 minutes and 30 minutes. Machine P needs 40 minutes and 30 minutes to produce each unit of high-five model. So we put into the table. So we have 40 minutes here and 30 minutes here. And back to the problem. Machine Q needs 20 minutes and 35 minutes respectively for the same kind of work. Okay, so for machine Q, 20 and 35, and then the time constraint here we got from this condition here. So time, the amount of time used by machine P does not exceed 4800. So means that it is less than and equals to 4800, and machine Q does not exceed 2800 minutes. Okay, so less than and equals to 2800. Make sure all of your variables have the same units, means that if your here is minutes, so here also minutes. Okay, so we got two constraints or inequalities to put into your this solution. And despite from that, the first inequalities that are very important is x must be greater and equals to 0 and y greater and equals to 0. So number 2 we got from the table 40x plus 30y less than and equals to 4800. And number 3 inequalities is 20x plus 35y less than equals to 2800. Okay, so for question C, we need to sketch and shade the feasible region satisfies the system of inequalities in part B. Means that we need to use these inequalities in order to sketch the graph. Okay, or and to find the feasible region. So for each inequalities, we need to equate. We change to the equal sign here because of we need to find at least 2 points because of it's from a straight line. Okay, so I put a table because of I need to find when x equals to 0 and when y equals to 0. So for the second inequalities, okay, when you substitute x equals to 0, so what is the value of y? So for 800 divided by 30, so you will get 160. And then when you substitute y equals to 0, so 4800 divided by 40, so you will get 120. So you got 2 points here, which is 0, 160 and 120 and 0. So this is the intercept of x and y axis in the graph for the second inequalities. For the third inequality, same as above. So make the table and then substitute when x equals to 0 and y equals to 0 into this inequalities. So when x equals to 0, so you just take 2800 divided by 35, so you will get 80. And then when y equals to 0, So you will get x equals to 140. So we got 2 points, or the intercept of x and y axis here. So we got 0, 80 and 140, 0. Okay, so we have to form 1 and 2 straight line into this graph papers. Okay, for question C, sketch and sheet the feasible region that satisfy the system of inequalities in part B. Okay, so please take note, when we want to solve this type of questions, we need to use graph paper. Okay, it is compulsory to use graph paper. Okay, so from B, okay, we take all the points because we want to form a straight line graph. Okay, so first we need to use the correct scale in order to get the correct graph, in order to get the correct feasible region. So we must have y-axis and also x-axis. Okay, and then look at your scale that you want to use. Okay, for we see the points here: 0, 160 and 120, 0, 0, 80 and 140, 0. So the highest number of x is 140 and the highest number of y is 160. So means that in your graph you must to consider the correct scale so that your graph is fully in your graph. So fully use your graph paper. Okay, so for x-axis, we can use 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160. Okay, but for y-axis, because of my graph paper is a bit small, so I have to use a new scale, which is 40, 80, 120 and 160, because of the highest number of y here is 160. But if you have the A4 size of graph paper, you can use a smaller scale. Okay, so this is y-axis and the last number is 200. Okay, and then for the first straight line, so we have 0, 160 and 120, 0. So means that this is the intercept of y-axis and this is intercept of x-axis. So I use a green line. So we got 120 and 160. Okay, so the first straight line. And please make sure that you write down the equation above the line. It's 40x plus 30y equals to 4800. And make sure this is equation, not inequalities. Make sure it is equal sign here. And look at your inequalities, because of it is less than, so means that your feasible region is below the line. So put an arrow sign, so the feasible region is below this line. Okay, and then the second line is 140 and 80 is intercept of x and y axis, so I use a blue line. So we have 140 and 80 here. So this is the second inequalities, or the second equation. 20x plus 35y equals to 2800. So 20x plus 35y equal to 2800. And look at the inequalities as well. The sign here is less than, means that the feasible region must be less than, which is below the line, below this line. Okay. And we have to consider the first inequalities, which is x greater than 0 and y greater than 0. That's why this graph we just draw in this first quadrant only. So just draw the first quadrant only, and the inequalities must have satisfied as x greater than 0 and y greater than 0. So other line for x axis less than 0 and for y axis less than 0, just delete it. Okay, so when we look at the arrow, so we can find the feasible region by looking at the arrow. So all the arrow must meet at the one point in the center. So the feasible region must be here. When it is satisfied all the inequalities here. So after you have shaded your feasible region, put the R sign, means that it is feasible region. Okay. Question D. The question asks you to sketch the objective function line. Okay, so take back in part in question A. So we have objective function pi xy equals to 80x plus 40y. Okay, so we got 80x plus 40y is the line, but we must to equate to something. So we just take 80 multiply with 40, which is equals to the 3200. Okay, and then as usual, do this table in order to get the value of x and y when it is equals to 0. So when x equals to 0, substitute here, so you will get 80, and when y equals to 0, so you will get 40. Okay, so just plot into the graph. Okay, I use the black line, and this objective function line must be in dotted line. Please make sure it is in dotted line. Okay, so when we put this number into the intercept point, so we have 40, 80. This please make sure you use the ruler. Okay, so this is the objective function line. So this is objective function line, which is equals to 80x plus 40y equals to 3200. Okay, and because of this is compulsory for all the linear programming questions. Okay, and then the last question is, by using corner point method, determine the unit of each model so that the profit is maximized. Hence, find the maximum profit. Okay, so from the feasible region, we can see that there has a corner point for this feasible region, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So all the shaded region is the visible region, and all the points that outside the visible region is called corner point. Okay, so we can put it A, B, C and D. Okay, so for the first A, we know that it is 0, 0. And then for B, we know that the point is 0, 80. And also D, we already know the point is at 120 and 0. But for C, the point is, if we use the correct scale, so and it's not quite big, it's not too big scale, so you can find it by just look at your graph paper. But if you cannot estimate what is the value or the point of C, so you can just solve the simultaneous equation by solving both inequalities. Okay, so we got inequalities here. We got 40x plus 30y equals to 4800, and we have 20x plus 35y equals to 2800. So in order to solve both inequalities, multiply the second inequalities by 2, so you'll get 40x plus 70y equals to 5600, means that you will get bigger number. 40x plus 70y equals to 5600. And then we take back the first equation, plus 30y equals to 4800. This is how we want to find the point C by using simultaneous equation, solving simultaneous equation. So we will get 40y equals to, after we minus, equals to 800, so y equals to 20, and then substitute back into the first or the second equation, so you will get x equals to, when you substitute back, 40x plus 30, 20 times 20 equals to 4800, so you will know that x equals to 105. Okay, so when we check back, is it correct? X 105 and y equals to 20. It must be here, half of your scale. So that's why for point C, it is much safe if you use simultaneous equation compared to just looking at the graph, because of sometimes your scale is a bit changed, so that's why you cannot get the accurate point. Okay, especially when you use very big scale. Okay, so we know that C equals to 105 and also 20. Okay, so this is the point C. Okay, so after we got all the corner points, we have to substitute each point into the objective function. Here x and y, just substitute the points. So for A, for the first point, so you got 0. For the second point, substitute 80 into y, so you will get 3200. And then point C, we got 9200, and D substitute 120 into 8 x here, so we multiply with 80, so you get 9600. So because of the question asks you to find the maximum profit, means that we need to find the maximum, the value that gives you maximum profit, so means that here 9600. So last, for the conclusion, you need to do the conclusion. In order to maximize the profit, in this question it states that a factory produce two types of radio, hi-fi and mini model. X is hi-fi model and Y is mini model. So in order to maximize the profit, the factory must ataupun should produce how much? This is X and this is Y. So 120 units of X model. X is hi-fi model, so we need to write down the variable back. So the hi-fi model, to get maximum profit, how much? RM 9600. So that is for question 1. Okay, for example 2, the federal government plan to buy at least means that the sign is like this, 700,000 of COVID-19 vaccines for the citizens. So the minister has ordered 400,000 from US. So we have two types of COVID vaccines here. One is from US and another one is from China. Okay, so 600,000 from China. So the cost to produce a vaccine in US is 200 ringgit, but in China it only costs 90 ringgit. So the maximum expenditure of this COVID-19 vaccine is 118,800 ringgit in thousand again. So for question A, the question asks you to determine the variable of this problem. So we know that X, let X is a unit of COVID-19 vaccine from US and Y is the unit of COVID vaccine from China. So because of the question asks you the variables only, so this is the answer. And then B, state the objective function and the constraint in order to minimize the total cost of producing the vaccines. So because of the objective function is to minimize the total cost, means that your objective function is cost. So read back, the cost is from US is 200 and from China is 90. So it means that we got 200x plus 90y. So in order to make it easy to do the inequalities, so we put into the table. So we got US for X and Y for China, and then the vaccines, cost and order. So how the federal government plan to buy at least 700,000 COVID vaccines, means that from US plus from China must at least 700,000. So we got 1 and 1, so at least 700,000. Okay, 1000 is the another unit, so we just use the put the 700 only. Okay, and then the cost here, we got the maximum cost is 118,800. So from US, the cost for each unit is 200 and from China is 90 and then the maximum means that it must be less than and equals to 118800. okay, and then the last one is, okay, so the mister has ordered 400,000 from US and 600,000 from China. Okay, so this is one inequalities, and then another one for China inequalities. So we got another two inequalities for each x and y. So x must be less than and equals to 400, and China must be less than and equals to 600. Okay, now after we put we fill all the blank in the table, so we can just bring out all the inequalities, which is a constraint. So number one, must x y greater equals to 0. Okay, number two, we got the single inequalities, which is x must be less than equals to 400. And then number three, y must be less than 600 here. And then number four inequalities is vaccine. We read from the table, so we have x plus y must be at least 700, and the last inequalities is 200x plus 90y must less than and equals to 118800. To sketch and shade the feasible region satisfying the system of inequalities in part B. Okay, so after we got all the inequalities, so for the inequalities that form an equation, so we need to find at least 2 points, because of we need to sketch the linear graph. So for fourth inequalities, so I use this box to substitute the value of x and y when x equals to 0 and when y equals to 0. So when x equals to 0, substitute here, so you will get y equals to 700, and when y equals to 0, so you will get x equals to 700 as well. Okay, and then for fifth inequalities, so again use this box. Okay, substitute x and y value, which is equals to 0. So when x equals to 0, so you divide 118800 divide by 90, so you will get 1320. And when y equals to 0, so 118800 divide by 200, so you will get 594. Okay, now to sketch the graph. Okay, so first thing is we need to sketch the axis, x and y axis. Okay, so I use red line to be the x axis. Okay, so make sure when you want to sketch the linear programming graph, use graph paper, use ruler. Okay, this is y axis. Oh, sorry. Okay, now we look back at the points. Okay, now the easy line is x equals to 400 and y equals to 600. So you can just sketch that line first. Okay, so x equals to 400 and x equals to 600, but before that, we need to decide how many scale that we need to use in this graph paper. So we look back at the point here. Okay, so when we look at the point here, we got 0, 700 and 700, 0. And for this point is 0, 1, 3, 2, 0, and also 5, 9, 4, 0. Okay, now we look at the highest number of x is 700, and the highest number of y is 1320, which is around is 1000. Okay, so we need to decide how many units that we use in this graph paper. So for x-axis, so we can use 100, 200, 300, and 400, 500, 600, and 700, which is the last number is 700. Okay, and then for y-axis, so we need a bigger scale because of the highest number is 1320, which is 1320. So we can use we can use 400. It's 400, 800, 1200, and 1600. Okay, so between this is 200. Here is 200. Okay, it's 600, 1000, 14. Okay, now we need to plot the graph. Okay, so we have number 2, inequalities, x less than equals to 400. So x equals to 400. So we can use blue line, 400. X equals to 400 is a horizontal line. X equals to 400. Okay, and then we have at y equals to 600. So again, vertical line, and the graph is y equals to 600. Okay, and then another line, which is from the inequalities number 4, x plus y equals to 700. So which is the point here is 0, 700, 700, 0. So the intercept at x-axis and y-axis is 700. So I will use a red line. So 700 is around here, and it's connect to 700 here. So this line is x plus y equals to 700. Okay, and then the last line is 200x plus 90y equals to 118, 800. So we have intercept at x-axis is 594. So we have point at 594, might be around here. It's very close to 600. And for y-axis, we have 1320. 1320 is might be around here. Okay, so we can connect these 2 points with a green line. I use green line, so I have this line. Okay, so this line is 200. Okay, 200x plus 90y equals to 118,800. Okay, so this is the important thing is that you need to do in your graph. Okay, and then to know whether, okay, so to sketch the feasible region, because here we need to sheet the feasible region satisfying the system of inequalities. So we look at back the inequalities, each of the inequalities. So for x less than or equals to 400, okay, so we know that the feasible region must be less than this line. Okay, less than this line, so I use the arrow. Okay, and then for number 3 inequalities, so less than again. So so your feasible region must be less than this line, which is below this line. Okay, I use the arrow. Okay, and then number 4, x plus y greater than and equals to 700. So the shaded region must be above this line. So the red line, so the feasible region must be above this line because of the sign is greater than and equals to. And then the last line, which is 200x plus 90y less than or equals to 118,800. So the feasible region must be below this line. Okay, so the green line, so the feasible region must be below this line. Okay, now to determine where is the feasible region, so we look at the arrow that going to the center, so which is satisfying all of the inequalities. So we find that the feasible region is here, so we need to shade the region. Okay, so after we shade the region, we need to put the R. Okay, write down the R. Okay, so means that it is the feasible region. Okay, and then question D asks you to sketch the objective function. Option B, we know that the objective function is 200x plus 90y. So we take that objective function 200x plus 90y. Okay, this is objective function line. Okay, now we need to equate with something number, which is we can just multiply 200 with 90, so we will get 18,000. Okay, now if we find the value of x and y, the intercept of x and y axis with this line is when x 0, so you will get y 200, and when y 0, you will get x equals to 90. Okay, now from the graph, we plot first x 90, which is around here, and y 200, which is around here, and use your ruler in order to get the straight line. But because of this is objective function line, so you need to use dotted line. Okay, so this is objective function line, 200x plus 90y equals to 18,000. Continue with question E. By using the corner point method, evaluate the number of COVID-19 vaccines that the government should order from US and China in order to minimize the cost of production. Hence, find the minimum cost. Okay, so there's two questions here. We need to find how many vaccines that the government should order from US and China, and what is the minimum cost. Okay, so first we need to find the corner point by looking back at the feasible region. So we know that we have 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we have 4 corner point. So I name it A, B, C and D. Okay, now to get the point A, so we know that the value here is y equals to 600. Okay, so we already know y equals to 600, and this point is intercept between x, between the red line and the blue line. So the blue line is y equals to 600 and the red line is x plus y equals to 700. So to get the value of x, so we just substitute y equals to 600 into this equation. Okay, so when we substitute y equals to 600 into this equation, so we will get x equals to 100. Okay, because of it's already know, if you have a correct scale of graph, so you will just look at your graph and you can just find the point A. So the point A is 100, 600. Okay, and point B is the intercept between the green line and the blue line. So same as before. So when we already know the value of y is 600, so just substitute y equals to 600 into this equation, into this value of y to get the value of x. So when we substitute 600 into this equation, the green line equation, so we know that the point B is 324 and 600. Okay, and then C is the point that intercept between the blue line and the red line. So we know that the blue line is x equals to 400. So we already know the value of x here. But the value of y, we need to substitute the value of x equals to 400 into this equation again. So we will get y equals to 700 minus 400, which is equals to 300. So point C is 400, 300. And the last point, D. Okay, the point D is the intercept between the blue line and the green line. So same as before, D is the value of x at D point is 400. So we already know the value of x is 400. And when we want to know the value of y, so we just substitute value of x equals to 400 into the green line equation here. So substitute x equals to 400 here. So you will get the value of y. So the value of y is in decimal places. So we got 431.11. We take until 2 decimal places. And then after that, we need to substitute all the points, all these corner points into the objective function here to get the cost. Okay, so when you substitute 100 and 600 into this objective function, so you will get 74,000. And then for point B, when you substitute, so you will get 118,800. And then point C, 400 and 300, when you substitute into the objective function, then you will get 107,000. And then the last point, D, 441.11. So when you substitute, so you will get 118,799.90. Okay, so now because we need to find the minimum cost, which is here, minimize the cost. So we know that from these 4 points, so the point A gives the minimum value. So hence find the minimum cost. So the minimum cost here is 74,000. And then we need to do the conclusion. Okay. So in order to minimize the cost, we answer back the question. So here the government should order how many units of COVID vaccines from US and how many unit of COVID vaccine from China. So because we already know the X is from US and Y is from China. So here is X, here is Y. So 100 should order 100 because of the actual unit of this COVID vaccine is in thousand. So you should put 1,000, 100,000 in the bracket units of COVID-19 vaccines from US and 600 in the bracket 1,000 units of COVID-19 vaccine from China. Okay, so the minimum cost is RM 74,000, but in the bracket again 1,000. Okay, back to the actual unit that this question use. Okay, so we finish example 2. I hope you guys can understand how to answer this type of questions. And then so here you got extra exercise, 2 questions, so you can just try first, and if you want to know whether your answer is correct or not, you can just refer your lecturer. So I think that's all for today. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.